Now, Columbus is nowadays very harshly blamed for his treatment of the Indians. I have already referred to the basic problem, which was that Columbus was a great navigator, a great explorer, not a civil administrator. He did not like to do it, did not do it well, always wanted to get away and go exploring. So he did not take his duties seriously enough, nor was he well equipped to carry them out as far as keeping order and protecting the Indians. And also he did believe that he had an obligation to repay Isabel and Fernando, who had sponsored his expedition, on the belief that they would open up a lucrative trade with China and Japan. This, of course, did not happen. The Indians had little of value to trade, and so he looked for gold. There was some gold on Hispaniola, but in order to get it, substantial efforts were needed to collect it, and the Indians had to be pressed into service in which they were often badly treated. And Columbus seemed to be insensitive to that because he was so eager to obtain some gold to pay off what he believed to be his obligations. Isabel always firmly rejected the idea of enslaving the Indians or subjecting them to forced labor, which amounted to almost the same thing. And later on, after Isabel's death, the great Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spaniard who had lived in Cuba and Hispaniola for a number of years, seen the bad treatment of the Indians, spent the rest of his long life in trying to see to their better protection, to change the laws that permitted them to be used for forced labor. And he was overall quite successful in that. Certainly there were many in Spain who took their Christian responsibilities seriously to these new people. Las Casas was probably the leader, but he had a good deal of help and support, otherwise he couldn't have made the changes that he did. There were many in Spain who were aware of their responsibility to protect the Native Americans. In assessing Columbus, it is really not fair to focus on his problems as a civil administrator. He never said he was a great civil administrator. He did want to retain overall control in the lands that he discovered. It was a natural ambition, although probably a mistake given Columbus's abilities, which did not lie in that area. But he should be judged on what he actually accomplished, not only for his adopted country of Spain, but for the world. The discovery of America is certainly one of the supreme achievements in history, with consequences so enormous that they can hardly be accurately estimated, because they affected so many hundreds of millions of people in so many different ways. Let's first of all be clear about the fact, every so often someone comes along and says, well, now, you know, you always thought Columbus discovered America, but he really didn't. Somebody else did. This is a false claim. Without meaning to come on too strong about this, this is simply historical nonsense. Columbus did discover America. No one before him knew what was there, knew they were discovering anything. Who arrived in America before Columbus? There is no historically significant evidence that anyone arrived there before Columbus, except for the Indians, the Native Americans, and the Norsemen, the Vikings, about 500 years before Columbus. Nobody else. All the other things are just vague rumors and tall tales. Native Americans and Vikings. Now, the Native Americans came from Asia, from Siberia, into Alaska, perhaps by way of the Aleutian Island chain in the area of Japan, back at the time of the last ice age, when the sea level was lower and there was a land bridge across the Bering Strait. They came through Alaska, and they gradually spread over thousands of years down through the whole vast expanse of the two American continents. This is a remarkable story insofar as we know about it. We don't know very much, because these original Native Americans did not keep written records. Much later, those in Mexico developed a written language, but that was long after the first arrival. They had no records of that. So it was a gradual spreading of uncivilized people who had no idea where they were. They had no idea this was a new continent. They had no idea where they had come from or how to get back there. This is not a discovery when something like this happens. It's a remarkable human story, but it's not a discovery. You can't discover something if you don't know that you've discovered it. That is a very different thing from what Columbus did. The Vikings, the Norsemen, who came across from Scandinavia to Iceland to Greenland, and then down here to Newfoundland at least, perhaps as far as Nova Scotia or even New England, though this is doubtful. We know for sure they got as far as Newfoundland. They also did not realize what they had found. Did not think of having discovered a new continent. They were not geographers. They were looking for wood. They were looking for colony sites. Very few of them ever got to that part of the world. They remembered it in sagas. They had no conception of having discovered a new world, a vast continent. That doesn't come through. It's a discovery of islands, as they put it, even though some of them were not islands. So they had no conception of having discovered anything. So you can't really call them discoverers of America, though physically they were there. Columbus, though he did think that America was an extension of Asia, he knew he had discovered a vast new land, complex of lands, some of it continental, and the islands as well. He knew exactly where they were, that they could, he could come back there and extend his explorations, found colonies, and begin the opening up of the New World. So he is, beyond question, the discoverer and the only discoverer of America, and by that discovery quickly opened up the whole vast region to the exploration and the knowledge of Europeans. So we find that just 13 years after Columbus's death, the extraordinary voyage of Ferdinand Magellan, who sets out from Spain, comes down here to South America, journeys all the way down to the end of South America, through the strait named for him, all the way across the Pacific and around the world. Without Columbus having come ahead of him, Magellan certainly could never have done all that on his own. And by that round-the-world voyage of Magellan, the people in Europe, the intelligent men of Europe, for the first time understood essentially the shape and character of the world, the great continents where they lay, the sea routes that were available, and from then on, Europeans could sail anywhere to open up the world for Christian civilization. And remember this also about Columbus, that he did this essentially alone. It was his idea. It was not some kind of company. He wasn't. He did end up sailing for the Spanish government, but only after years of effort to persuade them that his project was something worth supporting. It was his idea all by himself. He developed it, and he carried it out. The greatest discovery in history. No other discoverer, no other explorer can claim anything like that. Columbus did hope that he would gain some material reward for his efforts. Remember, he was born in poverty, had no money except what he had earned. He ended up getting very little from it, and he did insist on a title, and the title that he insisted on is very significant. He wanted to be called the Admiral of the Ocean Sea. That is the title of the greatest biography of Columbus by Samuel Eliot Morison. And indeed, that title describes Columbus better than any other that could be given. Admiral of the Ocean Sea, the man who, through his determination, through his enterprise, through his certainty that he could succeed, for the first time, journeyed across the Atlantic, knowing what it was, knowing that what he found on the other side was a vast new addition to human knowledge and to European development. So the Atlantic Ocean crossed and overcome was Columbus's triumph. Despite the fact that he was a failure as a civil administrator, that his treatment of the Native Americans was not always what it should have been, the magnitude of his achievement, the millions of people who were brought to Christianity, in the end, all of the Americas were converted. There were no significant areas that were left in paganism. It was the most complete conversion in history. The coming of the Europeans to the American shores made this possible. For this, Columbus deserved to be remembered and to be honored, whatever difficulties he may have had in his civil administration. Let's be fair to Columbus and see the magnitude of his achievements, to see the picture as a whole, and to recognize and honor him as he deserves. The greatest explorer and discoverer in history, the Admiral of the Ocean Sea.